Good morning, Manish, and welcome to the question and
Morning.
answer session. It was a splendid session. In fact, I would say a template for future speakers on how to make their point in 21 minutes exactly. So, before we go into some of the questions that have come, I think you've had an incredible journey from UDCT to MIT. So, for the benefit of our young viewers,
Mhm.
how did you manage your career? What was the planning that went into it? And how did you do a PhD in chemical engineering and then you are more or less in a commercial function? What all went through it? If you could tell us, that would be wonderful.
Great. I think, yeah, let me talk about the history of the last 15, 20 years. And in hindsight, all of this will you can make it look like a strategy or a strong plan as it happened, right? So I think chemical engineering was a choice because UDCT is one of the top colleges there in Mumbai and in India, and maybe a good name across the world as well. And I think chemical engineering, possibly not as much the passion, but I think the excellence of that institution that drew me towards it. And I think whatever the subject you learn the subject well. So I think that was UDCT, and then I did my master's and PhD in MIT, and that was a great experience. I think you meet people, good people, I think very intelligent people from around the world, and you figure out. I think you grow from one small well to the bigger global well, and you realize, I think you were just a small frog in that well. Now there are much bigger frogs, better frogs in the bigger well, and I think just really pushes your thinking, pushes your horizons. You get to appreciate different cultures, different way of thinking, and importantly, I think at MIT you be at the forefront of science and engineering. I think some of this might feel fuzzy, and might feel very futuristic, but that is what the culture there is all about. I think you sort of go at the frontiers, and you do sometimes crazy things to test what is possible and what is not possible. So I think that was a great experience in really thinking out there and thinking what is possible, what is not possible with some of the best brains in the world. And sometimes you feel very dwarfed. Arey, mujhe to kuch nahi aata hai, right? So, but that's okay. I think you always need those insecure feelings to push yourself harder. But I think during the journey, I realized I think I cannot be an academic, I cannot be a professor, though I have some of those traits. Then I realized I think I need to go back into the more commercial side of things or the business side of things, and that's when McKinsey came in, and I think there was a preparation for it. I got into McKinsey. In US, they're very open in hiring people from different backgrounds beyond MBAs. So I think though I don't have an MBA, still I went through the process, and many people from my colleagues, my peers also got through. And I think that 5 years was a intense training in how you think about problems. I think first in general, and I think specifically in how we think about business problems. I think the art of problem solving, the science of problem solving, the rigor of analytics, the rigor of database decision making, and the real true purity of being true to your client. I think whatever happens, you will not make an answer which is the wrong answer, despite whatever pressures you face from the CEO or his team. And I think that is immensely liberating. I think that sometimes you realize purpose gives you so much power. I think even the junior most guy there will say, "Here, I am seeing this in the analysis, so I will not sign off on recommendation X, Y, and Z." And that's the kind of push and pull that organization carries. And again, a very strong culture. I think right from being non-hierarchical to being fully dedicated to the clients to the culture of excellence. Finally, what you do, you have to deliver to the clients the value that they would not even expect. And that's the constant push that everyone is driven for. So that I think there's a great training ground. I think I'm thankful that I got that early enough in my career. I think because then you set the bars for yourself accordingly. Okay, I think I've lived in that atmosphere, and I think this is the benchmark I want to set for myself. And so I think that was a great learning there. And I think from McKinsey in the US, as a family, we decided I think it's time to go back to India. So I started looking at opportunities, and thankfully, Dr. Reddy's came by, and Hyderabad is a good soft landing for someone who is coming from the US. I think good infrastructure, and I think people, you find a lot of good people with good global outlook towards life. And I think Dr. Reddy is a great culture as well. I think a meritocratic culture and very progressive outlook towards business and towards, I think, in general, many things in the world. So I think that really attracted me to Dr. Reddy's, and 10 years has been quite a journey. I think I initially was pretty naive. I was looking at the business more from a data and the numbers and the analytics standpoint. Might be took me 3 4 years before we made some good mistakes to realize. I think this is a business on the ground. I think where the people matters, the doctors matter, the psyche of the sales rep matters, and I think your products on the ground matters. I think numbers tell a part of the story, but I think the bigger part of the story is a human story. And how do you really embrace your business model to first acknowledge that? I think the people reality of it, and I think then really design it for success in that world. Well, products matter, being first to market matters, having the best quality matters, but I think in the end it is the interaction between the rep and the doctor that carries the brand forward. And finally, what perception you create in the doctor's mind about your brands, that probably has the highest amount of stickiness, and all of us are driving and striving towards creating brands with that kind of stickiness. So I've done multiple staff roles, strategy, portfolio, innovation, training, and I got a good sense of how to be in an ivory tower, how to give suggestions to other people who are in sales and marketing. And finally, I think decided to take the sort of leap myself for myself, get myself out of my comfort zone of the ivory tower, and take a more commercial, fully dedicated commercial role, handling a big team, a big set of products, and figure out what it really first hand figure out. I think you always have a second hand, third hand experience of things, but this really, I think, at a first hand level, get experience of how things get done. How do you manage change? How you drive change? And how you hold yourself and your team accountable to numerical goals, financial goals, people goals, and finally where strategy hits the road, right? Strategy, I think, strategy hits the road and you figure out it's not as straightforward, and you continue to push yourself and your team towards better and better objectives, and better contribution towards the organization. So I think that's my journey so far, and I would say from a planning standpoint, possibly it has been planned at a level of every 2 to 4 years. Beyond that, I think we have to just keep it open. Life is too dynamic to really plan 40 years down the line or even 10 years down the line, but I think every 4 years or 3 to 4 years is a good time horizon to place your bets on.
Great. That's a fascinating combination. You impeccable academic credentials, and then you move into one of the world's best consulting firm, and then into the not just into the ivory tower of one of the India's top pharma companies, and then actually come into operations. So you get probably a 360-degree view of how a consultant looks at organization, and then an inward outside look now at the pharma industry. So it's no wonder that you, in the very beginning, said that we need to shift our focus from being centric to becoming more and more patient centric, looking
Yeah, yeah.
outward. So COVID-19 has necessitated a shift to digital efforts, we would say, because at the as soon as it happens, everybody went on their WhatsApp or their webinars. Not really a transformation by pharma, and it did reduce some barriers though, because it was not done before. So suddenly the rep, as Atish Mojumdar said in his session, the rep till now was coming home to rest from his day's work, and now he had to pivot and say, no, I'm not going home to work, it's work from home. So he had to do his work remotely. So what are your views, Manish, on the sustainability of such efforts in the future, considering that Indian pharma model is largely risk averse? So we only do it after somebody else had done it. So when we talk about digital, people ask us, are there any examples, case studies, benchmarks? So Salil Kalyanpur likes to say that in digital, there are no best practices, only next practices. So
Mhm.
how do you look at the future?
I think the headline answer, I think the path forward is very clear. I think the speed we will move or the industry will move is a matter of the ecosystem, or how some companies will take bets. Maybe some startups will challenge the incumbents very strongly, and maybe increase the pace of innovation and pace of change. But I think the path forward is very, very clear. And as I see some analogs, I worked in the pharma industry, the US as well. Even there, the change has been slow. I think the rep-driven model continues to be dominant, and rightly so, because it's still a fairly relationship-driven industry, and there's a lot of elements, as I discussed in one of my slides as well. I think the job that a rep has, and I think a lot of it cannot be supplanted by digital tools. But I think the integration of the digital tools into our business model is possibly, I think, some parts of a value chain. Some startups will challenge us severely with a lot of money from private equity, and then we'll be forced to take up those measures. I would say, I think, in terms of the transformation of a business model, or at least the integration of digital into our business model, is a given. I think no one can deny that. So we definitely have to work towards integrating these efforts into our business model. The speed and the velocity of how individual companies will change and industry will change is a matter of how things move forward. And as I look at, I think, other markets, I worked in the US pharma market. Even there, I think the physical rep-driven model has sustained. I think, but the surround sound around the rep, I think all the other enablements, all the other digital accessories around the rep have become a lot more robust, or I think getting robust over time. And that has been a journey for the last 15 odd years. I think I left the US pharma market around 10 years ago, but I think they've been working on it, and I think it has improved since then. And similarly for the Indian market, it will evolve. But I feel, I think what is different from now and last 15 years, we have a lot of startups that will come and challenge us with a lot of money from private equity and really push the thinking on our business models, and I think challenge the incumbents. And I'm sure that will drive the change, and that will drive the speed of innovation in this market. And I don't think there is a choice but not to think about digital, integrate digital as much as we can. And how it evolves, how we get value, is possibly, I think, is for all of us to learn.
Yeah, great. I fully agree with you because Samish Menon, when he talked about his two pilots, he said that we asked him a question: do you see the rep being there in the pharma model? And he says, I don't see the rep going anywhere for the next 15 years at least, and that in Europe. Because he said that the whole thing, whether we you roll down a digital campaign, it's all around the rep, because the relationship with the doctors is held by the rep. The rep may meet the doctor only 3 times a year, but that does not mean that there are only three touch points between the rep and the doctor. But using the digital platforms, he is able to create as many touch points as the doctor desires to have with the farmer. So I think in India also slowly we will be seeing the digitally enabled rep who will be probably not waiting outside the cabin for 45 minutes, but hopefully be able to engage the doctor in a much more constructive way.
I think the only point here I would say is that the experience of the doctor with the company will definitely get a lot more digitalized over time. And
Yeah.
I think I'm not, I think, thinking in terms of rep. What is this? The rep versus non-rep scenario. I think we have to all think about the experience of the customers, be it the doctors or the consumers as patients. So that experience definitely will get digitalized, and in that there will be some human element. There will be a rep on the ground, there will be a rep on the call, and all of those are, I think more practical calls we'll have to take. Whatever matters for that experience of that customer and experience of that consumer, and but that experience will increasingly get more and more digitalized.
Yeah. And I think there will be a good number of doctors who will still prefer to meet the reps physically, because at least I remember, it may not hold good today, but back in the 80s when I used to meet doctors in smaller towns, we were the only kind of educated people they would get to meet in the small micro towns with just 10 doctors. So the moment we visited the doctor, he would say he would make us to relax. He would order for a cup of tea, and those days smoking was not such a bad thing, and he would even light up, and they would say that we appreciate the reps coming, and it's a welcome relief for us from the tedium of seeing patients. So there are, I think, a good number of doctors, because we have some really fabulous reps also who are able to strike up a wonderful one-to-one conversation. So I think it'll all be kind of a evolving thing where there are those who will do very good with the physical connections, and there are those doctors who will do very well with the digital. So as you rightly said, it all depends on the customer and his preference as to what is the channel he would prefer. So this was an amazing slide that you shared, Manish, that even among the digitally savvy companies, only one in three get it. And in the traditional industries like pharma, it's even lesser. So probably this could be quite an intimidating thing for pharma leaders to take up. So what can pharma leaders do to enhance the or improve the chances of success of their digital transformation efforts?
Yeah, I think I would put the analogy to I think our pharma industry in terms of us launching new products. So I think to some extent, I'm not scared about the 10% or the 30%. I'm sure I think if you look at the industry stats, only 20% of the products launched by the industry become successful
Absolutely.
at a company level. So we are used to, I think, at a product level, we are used to, I think, launching, learning, failing, and then discontinuing the products, or launching, being successful, and making a big brand out of it. And I think we have learned that model on the physical side. There is a new molecule or a new formulation. We quickly launch, want to be the first to launch in that model because there is value associated with it. There's a potential value associated with it, and thus I think we are okay to fail. I think there, I think we're not as sort of harsh on ourselves. अरे क्यों fail हुआ? We're okay with 20-25% success rate. So I think in a little bit more uncertain world, which is the digital world, where the value, I think where the path to value is not clear, I'm sure the success rate will be slightly lesser. But I think if all of us go with the same mindset as we go with the new products, that there is a pot of gold out there. So I would take as many strikes at that pot of gold as possible, and we'll quickly learn, fail, drop the product, and be okay with it. And I think if something is successful, we will feed more money into it. We'll give it more resource allocation. So I think it's just a mindset. I think that we are becoming too judgmental about the digital actions, while I think we are okay with the similar failure rates on the product side on a traditional business model. So I would say, I think if we apply the same lens, and I think be open with it, and I think avoid a little bit of the judgment of the new versus the old, this will become a lot more easier to accept. This will become a lot more easier to integrate within a leadership and within our business models. We continue to do these experiments with our, I think sometimes I think it might be with products, but many times it is with business models. Say my brand is going to specialty X, I do an experiment, I take it to specialty Y. My brand is doing well in north, I do the experiment, I take it to sort of the region south. And I'm sure, I think even that there is a certain amount of success rate, and we are okay and open, and we have metrics around it, and we just have to apply the same lens on the digital efforts.
Great. I believe that new product launch could be one of the great ways to try the digital effort because you're starting on a clean slate. And we
Yes.
had a good session by Mr. Sanjeev Navangul on that, and says that go for it. If you're launching a new product, experiment with a digital platform because even if you fail, like you said in your session, fail fast and take the learnings and move forward. So this is a very nice term, vanity to value. I think vanity part we are all very comfortable with. Everybody likes to carry a nice iPhone or whatever. And some years back, I stopped using my iPhones because I realized that I was not really using all half the features that was there. It was more of a vanity. And my kids are more Android because they said the apps work better on the Android. So
Oh.
I went Android because I think it delivers more value because the apps work very well, especially the Ola app, which I have to use as soon as I land in the at any airport. So you spoke of plenty of avenues to drive sales and marketing agenda. Yet many pharma companies in India still bet on having mega sales forces and do not appear to optimize their sales forces. Somebody asked me sometime that what do you think, Anup, is the size of the field force? And the figure out there is about 3,50,000. But I told him, look at the top 10 pharma companies itself. I mean, they have anywhere from 10,000 to 5,000. So in the top 10 itself, you have about 2 lakh plus reps. So my estimate is that even if you say that it's the top 200 companies that have 96% of the market share, my estimate is that there are a million people on the field there. Of course, I'm including devices, disposable, diagnostic. So, how do you think that this is going to change going forward? What are your views on how companies could balance investment and allocate resources to have adequate strategic focus on digital transformation. Otherwise, I think we will be still with the vanity efforts.
Yeah, so I think here my perspective, as we discussed, I think the humble sales rep will continue to remain, and I think the lens I would take, I would again at some state, I think I'm a part of the industry now, so at some level, I'm not apologetic about the last Salesforce or the mega Salesforce that we have, but at the same time, I think if I look at it as a business leader, I would say definitely, I think any tools that are available to improve the productivity of my team, we should definitely look at it. And I think that is the lens I would take in terms of, I think, investing to improve the productivity of your sales force. Because as I think once we take it as a given, the Salesforce is going to stay. What all can we do? And I think experiments X, Y, and Z, and the investments that you make to improve the productivity of these guys to the completely next level. I think so. First, I think we should not be apologetic about the Salesforce, and the second piece, we have to be open to the fact that I think a large part of the industry, the Salesforce is not productive, and that I think the lens of productivity is something that we should apply constantly to each of our divisions, to each of our sales team, and figure out what all that we can do beyond the physical world to enable and enhance the productivity of the team. And there's a lot of things that we could do to really unleash that productivity. And I would take that lens, and I think that will be a lot more synergistic lens to our current thinking. But there's still a lot of value. So I think the one point that you're right, that the productivity is very less, and I think if we sort of target that particular piece with all the digital efforts, I'm sure I think we'll get a lot more conviction and confidence.
Great. I think that's a wonderful perspective and also a reassuring for many of the field force people, especially those who are in primary care. And what you said makes a lot of sense that the humble medical rep still carries a lot of what should I say, weight or importance, given that he has got the relationship and that relationship matters a lot. I remember that I started my career as a primary care rep and in the 80s, and we were about 500 for the whole company. And then I was promoted to the oncology division, and suddenly I became very lonely because it was just five of us for all over the country.
Wow.
But my sales as a rep those days was something like 50,000. And, when I came into oncology, it was virtually 10 times, because my territory was Tata Memorial Hospital. So I think going forward, the specialty areas, I think, are the ones which will go more for digital because those doctors themselves are more on the digital platforms. So that would be probably the low hanging fruit for pharma to go the whole hog of digital transformation.
Yeah.
So, key barriers. Building digital capabilities is the cornerstone for successful digital transformation. What can pharma companies do to attract and retain the right talent? How do leaders ensure there is an adequate focus on building digital capabilities?
Yeah, I think at this stage, I would say all of us are doing the talk, right? I think all of us, I think anyone in any industry, I think forget pharma is talking about digital, artificial intelligence, machine learning. But I think there's some industries that are much farther ahead. I think be it the finance, banking, consumer goods, those industries, the media, entertainment, those are much ahead in this journey. And definitely, pharma industry will have to borrow talent from that industry because to some extent, many of these skills are transferable because you have to understand the social media platforms, the platforms, as I discussed in my presentation as well, the multiple metrics that matter, how you pay the various vendors, how you pay the Facebooks and the LinkedIns of the world for leads and I think conversion of leads. So we have to get that expertise into our company. So I think finally, as we go and talk to people, as we go to other industries and talk to their talent, I think the big piece will be is the talk really getting converted into the walk. So I think all of us can do the walk, but I think if they don't see at least a direction where the company is moving forward, and I think where the company is making irreversible moves, that I think this is it. I think we have to have a big digital team, and I think that is the direction we are moving forward. It is not, I think, we will hire you for 1 year and we will be in probation and we'll figure out whether things are working or not working. I think the conviction and the commitment should be we are here and we are moving forward. I'm sure we will learn. I'm sure I think the productivity of our experiments will improve. But this is an irreversible one way journey. There is no coming back. And I'm sure I think if any one of us thinks that it is we can come back, I think we are fooling ourselves. We're fooling ourselves on the world. I think in any industry, I would say. I think be it teaching, be it banking, be it finance. Can we go back to the old world? We cannot. We all have to move forward. So at that level, I think companies should take that mindset and I think build that, instill that confidence in the talent that they're hiring. That this is a one-way street, and I'm sure we will persevere and we'll continue to move forward until we get it right. Sometimes we will learn it ourselves, and I'm sure sometimes we'll learn it from our peers. But we know I think we have to do this.
Right. Great. That's wonderful to hear that this is a one-way street. There's no coming back from that. More or less like what happened when electricity came and disrupted the chimneys and the candles and everything. But I think a lot of people still persisted with the candles, and now candles are still used, but they are more of a decorative purpose.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
so thank you very much, Manish, for taking time from your hectic schedule. And we at Digital Excellence Pharma Academy have been working from May onwards, and we have put together an incredible 60 webinars from pharma leaders,
Mhm.
both from India and from overseas. People like Hannah Wolfram, who's the author of the only textbook on key account management in pharma, has been on our faculty. Samish Menon burned some midnight oil to present his case studies. And Sudeep Chakrabarti with the UCB came all the way from Brussels and spent time with us. And there was Aparna Mittal from Singapore talking us about the patient engagement part of it. She has developed a very unique patient to patient peer group where patients feel more comfortable sharing. So we have developed a huge library, and we are converting this into a capability building program, and we look forward to your perspectives going forward, because ultimately whatever academia does, we are not academia in that sense, will need the inputs of practitioners like you as to what you like us to do. But we have also built a pilot into the whole thing, so people
Mhm.
actually can do experiential learning. The idea is not whether they succeed or fail. The idea is they get a hands-on experience and what did they learn out of it. So everybody who enrolls into a program, so we are taking that 10, 20, 70 model. 10 is where the structured learning, and 20 is where the peer-to-peer learning, and 70% is actually what you learn by doing. So we are incorporating a pilot into it as well. And I look forward to your support. Thank you very much. I look forward to an interaction with you once again, Manish.
Yeah, so Anup, thanks a lot. I think thanks for having me, and I think giving me a chance to share my learnings. I would say, as I discussed in one of my slides, the work that you and your team is doing is an important work in the norming. I think
Right.
all of this, I think us, the industry, people sharing our thoughts and insights with each other, will only get to better norming, a better understanding. We'll at least know, I think, these things not to do. Right?
Yeah.
What we need to do is probably will evolve, but we'll know for sure. I think X, Y, and Z we should not do. So I feel these are this is a big support in getting the norming of the industry at a faster pace. Finally, all of this will happen. It just sometimes diffusion of knowledge takes a bit of time, and what you're doing is making the diffusion of knowledge much more faster by being a catalyst in this sharing of knowledge. And at some extent, it's like the Android. It's the Android of the digital pharma, right? I think the Android which will be used by everyone, and eventually we'll have the Samsungs and the Motorola's on top of it. But the Android remains the same, which is I think the norms that the industry will jointly adopt and work towards as we integrate into digital into our business models.
Right. Right. I agree with you, because we had to quickly pivot from our earlier days of editing text to editing videos now. And
Yes.
initially there were some hiccups, but over a period of time, we've managed to edit the videos, because I think we are more and more going into the visual world where all learning will be essentially visually driven. And if the visual component is not there, the learning will not be complete. So thank you for being with us. It's
I
great.
think one suggestion, Anup, I would say, I think maybe you should get some of the good startups in here as well. I think some of those leaders are at the forefront of driving the change, sometimes very uncomfortably. And I think some of those people should be on these forums because that will be a big factor in the norming and learning of the entire industry.
Sure. I saw several names that you mentioned in your
Yeah,
slide. I will definitely get into touch with them and tell them that Manish suggested that you should share your learnings with us for the benefit of the industry.
yeah, they're much more sharper people, so I'm sure they will.
Oh,
And
yes.
they are, I think, doing a lot more
Oh,
riskier work. We are
oh,
still fairly stable and doing traditional work.
right, right, right. I agree with you. So thanks again, Manish. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. And
Thank you.
I certainly look forward to interacting with you sometime in the future again.
Thank you, Anu.